this is part of the value we try to bring is helping you guys go to the next level by putting you in front of the right people. So John, I'll let you take the baton from there. And yeah, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say, man.
Thank you, sir. And thanks for the really nice introduction. It's really a privilege to be on board with you guys here today. I'm a big fan of what Limitless is trying to affect in the industry. And guys, I just want you to know, if at any point there's ever anything I could do for any of you guys to help you guys win, I stand ready to support you guys as best as I can. I've been in the home improvement industry for probably almost 30 years now, and a good chunk of that time has been spent on the selling side, on the management side, and now on the training side. Dan Tinker hired me with SRS about 8 years ago, and he very eloquently said that if customers or contractors are going to bless us with their business, then we need to do everything we can to help them win, and that's what I'm all about. I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard me talk before, but one of the things that I think that I am notorious for, good or bad, is I tend to shove a lot of information into a very short period of time because I want to make sure that I bring as much value as humanly possible. So with your permission, I'm just going to kind of jump right into this. But again, I want to make sure that I'm clear at the end of the presentation. I'm going to give you guys my contact information. Please don't ever hesitate to contact me if there's ever anything I can do. Zoom calls are really easy. Jump on a Zoom call with you and your team to work through some challenges that you guys have on the sales side. I do those weekly. And they tend to be a lot of fun and really impactful as well. Guys, I don't know how many of you are baseball fans, but I like to use the baseball analogy when I talk about sales effectiveness and sales results. And, typically when we measure things like conversion rates, which is something that I think we need to do. I'm always shocked, guys, that when I get in front of contractors, and I'm talking about some of the biggest contractors in the country, and I ask sales reps, what are your close rates or what are your conversion rates? I'm shocked that some of them don't know. And yes, it might be make a statement about the sales rep themselves, but I also think it's a statement about the business owner and the sales manager for not really telling the sales rep how the company keeps score, and more importantly, whether we're winning or we're losing. And I hear a lot of people that complain, I want to sell more, but we really don't understand the numbers behind that. How are we going to know whether or not we're getting there? I think that conversion rates are much like baseball, right? And I like to cite, if you look at this 1962 New York Mets, I would suggest to you that they were probably one of the worst baseball teams that ever played. If you looked at their statistics and any stat that really matters in baseball, whether it's RBIs, hits, runs, strikeouts, walks, home runs, they were arguably the worst team that ever played. But as bad as they were, they still managed to win 1/3 of the games that they played that year. And conversely, and I'd probably get some jeers from this one, but I would argue that the 1998 New York Yankees were probably one of the best teams that was ever assembled. And if you looked at those same statistics that I just mentioned, they were across the board one of the best teams that ever played. But as great as they were, and they were truly great, right? They still lost 1/3 of the games that they played. And the reason I'm telling you this is because from a sales perspective, I want you to know that I firmly believe that you could be the worst sales rep on the planet. You could have absolutely no training and no skills, but if you're a nice person and you represent a brand that's familiar and that people are somewhat comfortable with in the marketplace, you're probably going to win 1/3 of the jobs that you bid. But I would also argue that as great as you are as a salesperson, if your projects are priced properly, and I mean if you're making a good margin, right, I believe that you will probably, as great as you are, you'll probably still lose 1/3 of those jobs that you bid. What I always want to focus on is how do I help contractors close that gap? Look, I've been really caused some people to get kind of pissy with me because I've had sales reps that say, I'm closing at about 20 to 25%, and I'm very quick to tell them that you're probably not selling at all. You're going in, you're developing a quick relationship, you're engaging in small talk, you're providing a price, and then because the customer likes you and because you're well known in the marketplace, or you're referred, you're probably going to walk out of there with about 1/3 of the jobs. I work with contractors across the country that are selling, single layer tear off, walkable, rectangular hip roofs, timberline shingles at $1,200, $1,300 a square retail, and they're closing at a rate of about 60 to 65% of the time. And what I've learned over the years is that their ability to really put themselves in a position where they can enjoy those results, it comes down to a couple of things. And what I wanted to share with you today was the observations that I've made over the years and the things that I have a tendency to find myself beating my head against the wall when I talk to sales organizations, right? I tell guys all the time, these are the things that we've got to do to be successful. I firmly believe that sales is nothing more than a series of repeatable and definable steps that everybody can master. But we've just got to make sure that A, we understand what those steps are, and B, and this cannot go without being said, the business owner and the sales manager needs to make sure that they are holding people accountable to exercising those tasks. Like, guys, training is not going to solve any of our sales problems. What training is going to do is it's going to provide information. What we need to do is we need to make sure that somebody on the other side of that training room is holding the team accountable to the things that they were trained to do. Because if they're not, then the sales reps are going to fall back on their old behaviors. And if they don't own their outcomes, we're going to have a big sales problem. Guys, look, I will tell you that the number one thing that I think that gets in the way of us closing more sales is that the salespeople aren't willing to own their own outcomes. If they don't get the job, I mean, look, here's the great thing, right? I could be in a one-on-one with you guys, sitting in your room with your sales team and say, hey guys, let's go over your, activities last week. Tell me about that sale that you never thought that you were going to get it, but things just aligned and all of a sudden they asked, where do I sign? And we all love to brag about those, right? Oh man, he said this, and then I said that, and then she said this, and I said that, and boom, I closed the deal. And we like beat our chest and go, man, I'm awesome. And I say, cool, you are awesome. Now tell me about that one that you didn't get. And then they say, well, they were stupid, right? We brag about the stuff that we get, but we tend to blame others for the stuff that we don't get. And I think that that is the one thing that if I was ever going to say to a sales rep, the number one thing that you need to do if you really want to maximize your opportunities is you need to own the result. And look, we hear this all the time. I had a kid in northern New England, prominent roofing contractor, and I was asked the group at the beginning of the session, what do you want to talk about? And this one kid said, man, I had a situation where they really wanted to buy from me, but our price was $3,000 more than the other guy. And I said, well, it sounds to me like they weren't sold on the value of using your company. And he got kind of defensive and he says, that's offensive to me. He goes, you weren't there. You don't know what we discussed. And I said, dude, I didn't need to be there. I don't need to know what was discussed. They decided to buy from somebody else. They weren't sold. And he literally slams his hand on the desk and he said, you're not listening to me. They were sold, but they went with the other guy because he was cheaper. And I said, you're not listening to me. If they were sold, they would have signed the paperwork. Guys, I believe wholeheartedly that the excuses that we hear are the reasons that salespeople use to deny their personal accountability. And if we really want to help them get to the next level, we can't just sit on the other side of the desk and blame them for their stupid excuses. We need to, through our coaching efforts, we need to ask them questions to help them come to the realization that they need to change. Guys, look, I'm going to really oversimplify something for you. If we want to grow sales, sales growth comes as a result of two things. It's a commitment to the activities, and it also comes down to improving the outcomes of those activities. So you're going to have sales reps that are going to say, man, I don't have enough time in the day. I can't knock any more doors. So I'd say, fair enough. Then we need to figure out how we can improve the outcomes from those activities. Look, one of the other reasons why sales reps fail or they don't really maximize their fullest potential is they don't trust the process. Guys, it's not uncommon for me to work with a sales organization and we ask them, what is your sales process? And they're unable to define anything that resembles a process. Well, we kind of show up and, we engage in some small talk and I'll do an inspection and then I'll, take some measurements and I'll provide them with a price. And I would argue that that process that was just defined is probably not enough to build the emotional connection necessary for us to escape that price-driven sale. Guys, I define the sales process as nothing more than a series of repeatable steps. It's a progression of milestones that's designed to build an emotional connection and eliminate every objection other than price. And when I teach salespeople how to sell, like it or not, the process that I teach is designed to make it about price. I want to make sure at the end of the day, the only possible reason that they could give me to not buy from me is because of the money. Because it's my firm belief that I can always, within reason, right? I can almost always work out the money. And it's also my firm belief that if they really, really want to do business with me, they'll figure out a way to find the money. I'm hoping that makes some sense to you guys. And it's interesting because I don't know if you guys are familiar with 𝗖cieých𝗳𝗲𝗀𝗀, but 𝗖cieých𝗳𝗲𝗀𝗀 is the best-selling author of sales books of all times. His book, Little Red Book of Selling, I think it sold like 9 million copies and was translated into 14 languages. And Gitomer came to a talk that I did in Charlotte, North Carolina, because his son-in-law is a roofer and he wanted to see what it was all about. And he came up to me at the end of a 7-hour session. I was really privileged that he sat through that entire event. And he came to me and he said, man, your training is designed to get to price objections. And I was like, wow, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to say that. And he says, no, you need to own that. That's exactly what it is. And he helped me kind of reshape how we talk about this. But guys, one of the things that 𝗖𝗲𝗧 said, and I'm a firm believer in this, and it's really fundamentally changed the way that I think about sales and the way that we train, is 𝗖𝗲𝗧 says that sales are made emotionally and they're justified logically. And I actually did some research on this. And there is research out there that suggests neuroscientists have found that highly educated, very smart people whose brains were damaged in the area of the brain that generates emotions, that those people were literally incapable of making very basic decisions. And I'm not talking about complex decisions. I'm talking about decisions like, which shoe should I put on first? Like, they didn't know what they should do. They were unable to decide because their brain or their heart, their gut, couldn't tell them how they felt about it. So the thing that I want us to be really sensitive to is that we need to, and the process needs to make sure that at the end of the day, we've built an emotional connection that compels them to want to fix their problem. It compels them to want to work with my company, and it compels them to really want the roof and the products and the systems that we help them design. But look, all that said, right, we can't underestimate the fact that the deck is stacked against you. And what I mean by what I'm saying is that you're out there and your sales reps are being tasked with, you need to go out and you need to build an emotional connection with your prospect. But look, it's not an easy thing to do. Like, I would argue, guys, people say to me all the time, isn't the close stage the hardest stage of the process? And I'd say, not for me. I think the rapport building stage is the hardest part of the process. And I don't mean the ability to just engage small talk. I mean the ability to make a genuine connection with the prospect. Some people are insanely guarded. The first thing they tell you when you get to the door is, I'm not buying anything today. Like, that's a knee-jerk reaction to somebody that wants to control the sales process because they're afraid that you're going to sell them something. So it's hard to build that rapport. And when you couple with that the perception problem that exists, right? According to the Better Business Bureau, 11 of the top 20 least trusted business types that consumers do business with is contractors, and roofers have held the #1 position for about 13 straight years. Yeah, right? Woo! I used to do seminars in Canada, and the #1 least trusted business type in Canada was also roofers, but they've only held that position for about 9 years. So USA, baby. Now, look, some of us are going to say, I don't know if that's really true, John. Well, just think about it like this. In 2021, the National Association of Home Builders told us that as an industry, we replaced 5.25 million roofs. Some of those roofs were paid for by landlords or insurance claims or property owners. 5.25 million roofs replaced. The Better Business Bureau tells us in that year, there were 5.5 million inquiries about roofers. I mean, that's unbelievable. Make sense? So what I really want you to think about here, and we'll oversimplify this, right? If this is the circle of trust, most of us, before we get in there and develop a relationship with the prospect, we're out here. Oh, wait a minute. If you guys do storm restoration work, you're out here. Now, look, I'm being funny here, right? But one thing I want you to be extremely sensitive to is the degree to which you're comfortably nestled inside that circle of trust is the degree to which the prospect is really going to want to do business with you. It's the degree to which that there's a perceived value in doing business with you. And within that value, there's also a perceived risk of doing business with the guy outside that circle of trust. So everything that we're talking about when we talk about building that emotional connection, it's all about, how do I get inside that circle to make them want to snuggle up with me and want to do business with me? And guys, I want to really make sure that I stress I'm not talking about being manipulative here. I'm not talking about cajoling the prospect or playing psychological games with them. I'm talking about making a genuine connection with them to the point where they really like the company, they really like the product, and they really want to do business with me. Now, the challenge we have on the storm restoration side, it makes this perception battle even more complicated, because while consumers, for the most part, don't trust contractors, and they particularly do not trust roofing contractors, at the same time, your prospect is being bombarded with positive messages that really talk about how amazing the insurance company is. Jake from State Farm's being given gallons of ranch dip because the delivery girl is just so in love with State Farm. And these ads are really, I don't believe they're designed to generate revenue that comes from new policyholders. I believe that these insurance companies are playing the ultimate game of catfish, right? Because when you swipe right on State Farm and then they show up for their claim, you have a reality that is very, very different. And they want people to realize and think that that sandwich that they're eating is the best sandwich money can buy. So look, here's where the situation gets even worse for us, guys. People not only form an opinion or a view or a bias, they literally will anchor themselves to that. So much so that they'll look for evidence to support it. So just like if I walked into a used car dealership or I walked into a car dealership and I wanted to buy a new car and I had all the specs of that car printed out and I told that rep, this is the car I want. I don't want anything any different. I don't want to pay a penny over 60,000. And the rep comes running back and he goes, I have that exact car in stock and I can sell it to you for 50,000. Many of us would go, dude, what's the catch? Like, we don't believe it. We discount it as credible. And the reason is because when we approach the process, we firmly believe that the sales rep at the car dealership is never going to give us a good deal. He's never going to make it quick and easy. And he's going to do everything he can to take advantage of us. So even when we're presented with something that we could only describe as a really great deal, my gosh, I'm getting the car I want for $10,000 less, we don't believe it because it goes against what we think is going to happen. So if you dial that back to the contractor selection process, it's my firm belief that homeowners are approaching that process with a very low level of trust. And even though we're doing everything right, they're still in the back of their mind thinking, can I trust this to be true? I mean, some of us are going in and we're making a really powerful case with our company story about why we're the best contractor in the marketplace. And I would argue that in many cases, those consumers are listening to that and they're going, wow, you sound really good, but you are a salesperson. And maybe you're just telling me all that stuff because you're trying to sell me. And this is why when we teach the process, we believe that there is a progression of milestones that's really designed to do two things. Number one, it's designed to eliminate every objection other than price. But number two, it's also designed to help the salesperson understand that you've earned the right to ask them to work with you. The first commitment is a commitment to fix the problem. Do they recognize they have a problem and are they committed to solving it? If they do, if you show the results of your inspection and you ask them, hey, look, based on this damage, it would be my recommendation that you not put this off. But look, I'm not here to tell you guys what to do. Help me understand, like, where are you at right now? Based on what we're looking at here, how important is it for you guys to replace this roof? If they say to you, oh, no, we know we need to do this, we can't put this off, they've just given you that need commitment. And that's powerful, right? Like, I'm in the Northeast, right? And I don't know where everybody's located, but I know if you're in the Northeast or in the Midwest or the Northwest, and there's a lot of times the consumer will say, well, I think I want to wait till spring. And reps always love to just sort of throw that problem on somebody else. Well, John, what do you say when they say that they want to wait till spring? I say, well, you didn't get the need commitment. Right? So what we're trying to do with the process and also with these milestones is we're trying to learn the truths. Because in the end, when the prospect does fear that we're selling them something, they're now being put in a position where they're being asked to buy something, they're going to say things that aren't true. And I'll talk a little bit about why that happens, but they're going to say some things that aren't true. And I'm not trying to make the prospect eat their words here, but if they told me early on in the process, we can't put this off, and then I put the price in front of them and I ask them to get on the schedule and they say, well, we think we want to wait till spring, I think it's perfectly reasonable for me to say, hey, look, I completely understand. Can I ask you a quick question? Earlier, when we showed you the result of the inspection, you made it seem like this is something that you didn't want to put off, that you felt you needed to do it now. Like, what's changed? And I'll tell you what's changed, guys. They now know what it's going to cost and they're being asked to buy it. And that's okay. Because at this point, I could, if we follow the process, I could very confidently and sincerely ask, is it the money? And if I get that prospect to tell me, yeah, John, it's a lot of money, we'll talk in a few minutes about how we can air out that objection and then put them in a position where they see it as a little bit more affordable. The second commitment that we need to get is a commitment to the company. So think about this from a progression standpoint. They just looked at the results of the inspection and said, you know what, John, we need to do this. We can't put this off. Well, now we're at the point where we're going to say, great, let me talk to you about why we're the best choice for the project. And I want to be clear, right? From a process perspective, before you tell the company's story, we should ask them some questions so that we understand their wants, their needs, their fears, their concerns, and then use that information to shape the company's story in a way that speaks directly to those wants, needs, fears, and concerns. So in a retail environment, after I tell my company's story, I'm going to ask a very simple open-ended question. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I just spent a few minutes talking about my company. Did you have any questions? And they're going to say, no, I think we're good. And I'd say, great, look, based on what we've talked about so far, how confident are you in our ability to handle the project? Now, if they say, oh, we think you guys are great, that's the answer that you want, because that tells you that they're very comfortable with the company. But one thing that I would encourage you to do is don't just take that answer and run with it. Take that answer and ask them to explain to you the reasons why they feel that way. So it might sound like this. It might say, hey, great, I'm really happy to hear that. But look, just so I know specifically what's important to you guys, can you tell me a couple of the reasons you feel that way? I mean, like, what stands out? The reason why I want them to tell me that stuff is because at the end of the day, when I put the price in the front of them, if they turn around and they say to me, well, John, your price is $3,000 higher than the other guy, I can ask them to measure the value of those reasons against the additional cost. Make sense? The other reason why I'm asking them that question is because I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into their commitment to the company by asking them to explain to me and subsequently explain to themselves out loud so they can hear it, the reasons why they like my company. Because once they hear it, once they say it, they own it. The third commitment we get to is a commitment to the product. And I'm going to share with you in a few minutes that it's not really about the shingle brand. It's about your system, right? So here's how this is working from a progression standpoint. I really want to do the work. I really like your company. Great. Let's build a roof together and give you some options. Tell you what your options are. Once we do our build the project with the homeowner, we're then going to ask for the product commitment by saying, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I just spent a few minutes talking to you about the products we use. Just want to get a sense from you. How happy are you with the products we're using and all the choices that we've made? Now, there's a good chance that she's going to say, not he, she's probably going to say, oh, I'm really excited. I think it's going to look great because the home is the center of her universe, right? It's a reflection of her personality. So now what we have here is we have a customer that's already told us in the short term, we're just shrinking this process down to nothing. I want to do the work. I like your company. I love your product. Because I would argue that this is where the emotion is. And I would also argue that this is where the value is. The perceived value of doing business with your company, that perceived value that we're going to use to help escape the price-driven sale, to overcome those price objections, is really predicated on how badly they want to fix the problem, how much they believe that we're the contractor of choice, and how much they really love the product. And assuming we get those three commitments, then it just comes down to one final question. Can you afford it? And guys, I will tell you this. Sorry, I jumped the gun here. Some sales reps are uncomfortable asking for the sale because they're afraid that they don't want to be perceived to be pushy. I don't want to be that type of a salesperson. Please know that you will never be perceived to be pushy if the customer has given you these first three commitments. Do you know what's pushy? When the homeowner says, I don't think I need a new roof. Great, sign here. I don't like your company. No problem, sign here. Look, I don't think I need a new roof. I don't like your company. I think your product sucks. No sweat. Sign here. We'll get you on the schedule. Like, that's obnoxious. And I'm saying that for the sake of humor. We would never do that in a million years. Please don't ever do that. But I also want our salespeople to understand that if they're telling us they want to do the work, they like the company, they love the product, and as long as they know exactly what it's going to cost, how the payments work, and all the things that are involved in actually paying for that project, the terms, there's nothing wrong with me saying, hey, let's get you on the schedule. And there's nothing wrong with it because what I'm really doing is I'm focusing on helping them solve the problem that they want to solve using the company that they like and the products that they want. And I'm hoping that that makes sense. So when you blow this up into a very simplified view of the sales process, it starts with an opening stage that we're going to use to build rapport and trust. We're not going to necessarily have trust in that first stage, but we're going to try to start building it. We then do a needs assessment, which is going to avail itself in the form of a roof inspection. It's going to tell us what the project needs. That's going to help us provide and earn that much needed first need commitment. The second half of the needs assessment is to determine what the customer wants, not only from a product perspective, from a contractor experience perspective. And there's questions that we can ask. Then once we have a good idea of what it is that they want and need, we're then going to talk a little bit about our company and hopefully shape that around what it is that we learned when we did our needs assessment. We're going to ask for the company commitment. Getting that company commitment, we're going to do a product presentation. At the end of the product presentation, we're going to ask them if they're happy with all the products that we're using and the choices that they've made. We're then going to ask them a trial close question, which basically says, hey, look, usually at this point, our customers tell us they want to do the work, they love the company, they love the product. As long as we can make it fit in their budget, they're going to want to get on the schedule. Is that where we stand? And if the homeowner says, yeah, at this point, we just really need to know what it's going to cost, we then provide our proposal and then we ask them to get on the schedule. Now, I love it when I deliver this very quick slide because it really does oversimplify the entire process. But I would argue, guys, that it really is as simple as that. The other thing that sales reps do that gets in the way of them closing that gap is they trust the prospect when the prospect tells them things like, we're going to wait till spring, or we need to think about it, or we need to get a few more estimates, or now's not a good time, or we're not buying anything today, or the prospect that says we never make a decision on the first meeting. Guys, look, I believe in people, right? I don't think that people are inviting you out to their home because they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and deceive you and they want to lie to you. I don't think that's the case. I think that people are scared. I think they don't really know what's involved. There's a lot of bad information out there about bad roofers and they don't want to make a bad decision. And I also believe if I really want to, completely talk up my friend Jeffrey 𝗬𝗲𝗀. 𝗬𝗲𝗀 says that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And think about that, right? We never say, I'm going to go get sold a car today. We never say, I'm going to go get sold a house. No, we're going to buy a house. It's so much more empowering. So when people raise these objections or they give you these excuses, for the most part, especially in the beginning, we're not buying anything today. That's just them trying to gain control over the conversation because they're trying to avoid and deal with the anxiety of, I don't want to be sold something. And, people used to tell me that all the time. John, I just want to let you know I'm not buying anything today. And I would always look them in the eye and say, I want you to know, Mr. Prospect, the last thing I'm going to do today is ask you to buy from me. Get it? That's a sales joke that never really works. The last thing I'm going to do today is ask you to buy from me. Forget it. We'll just move on. So guys, think about the emotion thing, right? When you build that emotional connection, right? The gut, the heart, right? And the gut and the heart, I always say, are kind of the same thing. You don't trust people because it's logical. You trust people because my gut says I can trust you. I got a good feeling about you. So as you move through the process, people are going to say things like, you seem nice. I could see myself working with you. Wow, your company sounds awesome. Even to the point where in their own mind, they're saying, wow, I trust you. I'd be crazy to use anybody other than you. But what happens is that when you put the price in the front of them and you ask them to buy, the logical side of the brain will step in and ask them questions like, hey, hold on, Charlie, can we afford this? Maybe we should get other bids. Maybe we need to think about it. Are you being too impulsive? And look, I don't want to give you guys like a master class on how the brain functions, but the emotional side of the brain is an extremely powerful engine. We can manage millions of emotions at one point in time. And if you don't believe that, I'll introduce you to my 11-year-old daughter. Okay. Wide variety of emotions at any point in time, hundreds of bits of stimuli that we can deal with. The logical side of the brain is not as powerful. It can only manage 2 or 3 different bits of stimuli. So what's happening is the client is making the decision early on in the process. I like you. I trust you. I want to do business with you. Their heart is sold. But when the price is put in the front of them, the logical side of the brain is a much slower engine, and it's going to stall and say, hold on, John, I'm not there yet. This is why when we teach people how to overcome objections, I'm not trying to teach them how to manipulate the customer into making a decision. What I'm trying to teach them to do is how to continue having a conversation to let the logical side of the brain play catch up. And it works. I mean, if by me asking the question, well, what exactly do you need to think about? I'm just asking them to think out loud with me the reasons why they want to take some time to think about it. And there's more sophisticated ways that we can ask that question, but all we're doing is we're trying to continue the conversation in a non-pressure, productive and professional way. So if you look at this roadmap that I built, I took the sales process and I blowed it up into a huge roadmap. This roadmap speaks to every single action. So sales managers and business owners, you need to use this as a tool and hold your people accountable to these actions. The process in and of itself is just a Gantt chart that kind of walks you through the series of steps. But these are the actions. Did you do a walk around? Did you build rapport? Did you do the inspection? Did you tell them that it's okay if they say no to you? Did you tell them it's okay to say no? Did you discuss your inspection? Did you get the need commitment? Did you do a homeowner interview? Did you ask for the company story and shape that company story around the homeowner interview? Did you ask for the company commitment? Did you do a product presentation? Did you get the product commitment, ask for the trial close, give the proposal, pre-sale, and then ask for the sale? And I'll also tell you guys is every area that's highlighted here in this orange brown color, those are the areas in the process where the prospect's going to tell you the truth because I'm not asking them to buy. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these areas of the process to ask them to tell us the truth. So then in the end, when we put the price in the front of them and they have that anxiety about, well, wait a minute here, my logical side of the brain hasn't caught up yet. We can then revisit those truths, those lies. Okay. Revisit those truths. I will also tell you this, shamelessly, I'll highlight that SRS is partnered with a company called ProFund, and ProFund provides a data on the front end that helps you guys optimize leads. It also provides data that tells you the persona of your buyer, what type of buyer you're going to be meeting with. It tells you whether or not they're receptive from an upsell perspective. And it also provides a property report that you could bring in to use as a tool to help gain credibility at the kitchen table. And then in the end, it buttons all that up with a very easy to use and very inexpensive financing program for you guys. Every area here that's highlighted in green is an area where ProFund uniquely adds value to the sales process. So again, if you want to learn more about this tool, feel free to reach out to me and I could put you in touch with those guys, but it's availing itself to be a really awesome bit of technology. One of the other things that sales reps do is they don't tell their company story, and guys, or your company story, I should say. And part of the reason why I think they do this is some sales reps suffer from head trash, right? I don't want to sound like a salesperson. I don't want to do the things that a salesperson's supposed to do because I don't want to feed that negative perception of what a salesperson is. So they don't really prepare a presentation or a pitch. They don't really go over your company's story. And I think that that's a problem. Guys, the company story presentation is the point in the process where you have the opportunity to sell them and communicate to them why you should be the contractor of choice. And if you look at this chart up on the top, it starts with us doing that needs assessment to determine what are your wants, what are your fears, what are your concerns about starting a project like this? What are the top 3 things that are most important to you guys when selecting a home improvement contractor? And then using that information to shape my presentation. But what sales reps too often do is they speak in platitudes. And this is why I say, like, if you say it, they're going to doubt it. But if they say it, it's true. And a platitude is really defined as any word or phrase that the customer, that's going to enable your competition to sound exactly like you. And guys, we speak in platitudes. I mean, I see this when I work one-on-one with people. We say, well, we're the highest quality, most reliable, most reputable. We might as well be reciting the Boy Scout oath. Best service, best value, most trusted, reasonable prices. Does anybody promote the fact that we suck, but the price is pretty good? Obviously not. But the thing that we need to ask ourselves is when you think about your company's story, ask yourself, does the customer expect you to say that about yourself? How likely is it that your competition is saying the same thing? And if both of those things, don't give you the right response, then are you really differentiating yourself? Are you really standing out? I had a guy who attended one of our seminars sent me this, and I said, well, at least it's honest. So it's not the best, but it's still good. That's at least a little more believable than what I just showed you before from a platitude perspective. So guys, one thing that I would encourage you to think about when it comes to your company story presentation, again, we're trying to build an emotional connection. Guys, it really needs to start with who is the owner and why was this company founded? What were the principles that you founded on your business? Some of us have some really amazing stories about how I was on my first roof when I was 6 years old with my grandfather. And some of us have, decided to go into this business and start our own business because we used to work for somebody else and they weren't doing the right thing. Whatever your story is, it's your story and it needs to be engaging. It needs to be compelling. I believe that sales rep needs to talk about the business owner and why he or she is such a great person to work for. They need to introduce the people that are going to be involved in managing their project. Look, as a sales rep, I am well aware of the fact that my promises are only as good as the people back at the company that are going to execute on those promises. And I would encourage you guys, if you want to build an emotional connection, invite them into a relationship with those people. You also want to focus not on just the finished project, but on the totality of the experience. People don't complain in Google reviews about whether or not the valley was cut properly or if you used the right amount of ice and water protector. What they complain about is cigarette butts in the landscaping, nails in their tires, the dog got threatened by one of the workers who chased him with a hammer, just stupid stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that you need to be sensitive to. You also need to make sure that any statement you make about your business, that you answer the question, so what? Look, we can make a really passionate case that we're a 3rd-generation family-owned business, but the homeowner doesn't know why that's important to them. So if you're going to say we're 3rd-generation family-owned, you need to explain why that's a benefit to them. If you're going to talk about the fact that we use all of our own employees and we don't use subcontractors, tell them why that's important to them. When you highlight the need for them to have contractors to have the necessary insurance, make sure that they understand the reasons. And I would argue that when you take all this stuff and you couple it into a really nice presentation, that becomes the secret sauce. That becomes the compelling reason that somebody has to want to use you. So again, it might be a picture of the business owner, and I would talk about this guy and, hey, this is Lester. He's the owner of our business. He's a great guy. And here's one of the things that, one of the reasons why I work for Lester. And guys, I'm going to share with you, if you're a sales rep for the business or an employee of the business, your reasons for working for that business owner and your decision to work for that company, there's a why behind that. I would encourage you to embrace that. I've had some salespeople that have passionately argued the point that I live in the community. My kids go to the same schools as my clients' kids. I see my customers at the movie theater and in the grocery store, and I don't ever want to have to hide when I see them. That's why I work for this company. I will tell you that if that is the way you feel, that is extremely powerful messaging to give to your prospect. I think I could work for any manufacturer or distributor I want. I choose to work for SRS, and there's a powerful reason behind that, and it speaks to our people and our commitment to the customer. Look, you're going to have somebody that's in your office that's the administrator, and she's like the glue that holds everything together. Like, show that client a picture. This is Anna. She's great. You're going to love her. Anna's the person who's going to schedule your crews. She's going to order your materials. She's going to pull your permits, and she's going to communicate with you guys through the entire process. Right? This is Jim. He's our project manager. Think of him like as the safety guy. He's going to make sure that the dog has a safe place to go to the bathroom. The kids have a safe path in the morning to catch the school bus. He's also going to make sure that the project is kept neat, that the neighbors aren't like losing their minds, and that the crews are doing everything that needs to be done to provide a great outcome on the project. Guys, when you show the client a picture of the people that they're going to be interacting with and in a relationship with, it's no different than me meeting the girl of my dreams and then 6 months later saying, I'm going to take you to meet my family. I might show them pictures first, or her pictures first, and say, this is my dad, this is my mom, this is my brother, this is my dog, because I'm trying to manage the expectations and help her build a connection with those people before she has the opportunity to physically meet them. And again, I mentioned earlier about sales reps. Tap into your personal why. Like, I've had situations where reps say to me, hey man, I compete with this other guy and he's always $3,000 less than me. How do I compete with that? And I said, why don't you go work for him? And they go, I don't want to work for him. Why not? Well, because we do the job right. And I know that my owner is going to take care of every problem and he's not going to hide from it. And it's like, well, damn, why don't you tell that to your prospect? One of the other things that sales reps do, this is a huge problem, guys. And trust me, I'm an old window guy. And when I sold windows, the part of what we sold was the window, but it was all proprietary. I had my triple glazed, argon, krypton glass that we'd fry an egg on in the front of the homeowner. And oh my God, look at what's going on. I mean, we would sell the welds and the balances and the hardwares and the corner sections and get the customer really excited about the product before we actually pulled the window out of the box. Can't do that with a shingle. Your TAMCO shingle is no different than the TAMCO shingle that the other guy is selling them. So what tends to happen is, and guys, I will tell you, it's our fault as owners and managers. It's because we don't really do a good enough job of training our people and holding them accountable to the things that I've been talking about during this webinar. So what happens is the vendor gets involved and they teach them how to sell their product. And when they teach them how to sell their product, that product then becomes a crutch that the sales team uses, because that's all I really know how to sell. But what you got to realize is, at the end of the day, are they buying a TAMCO roof system, or are they buying a less risky roof system that uses TAMCO products? And look, I'm not suggesting to you that you don't leverage and benefit from the power and the equity of the TAMCO brand. What I'm suggesting is that you don't make that the differentiator. And I'll tell you guys, I've had some contractors that have gotten pretty critical of me when I talk about price objections. And they'll say things like, John, if all the contractors are using the same materials and they're buying them from the same suppliers and they're using the same installation practices, there's no reason why one contractor should be more expensive than the other, which I can't even put in socially acceptable terms how I feel about that stupidity. But look, if you don't want to think about it from a numbers perspective, think about it like this. Have you ever seen Hell's Kitchen? Like, what does Hell's Kitchen teach us about the sales and selling product? Guys, in Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay is showing an experienced cook how to cook a Gordon Ramsay recipe. They're in Gordon Ramsay's kitchen, using Gordon Ramsay's ingredients, using Gordon Ramsay's pots and pans, with Gordon Ramsay's sous chef standing over their shoulder directing them. And what you'll realize when you watch that show is, despite all that, they still screw up the dish beyond recognition. So look, I can use all the same ingredients to make a Gordon Ramsay cheeseburger, but it doesn't mean you're getting a Gordon Ramsay cheeseburger. What I would suggest to you guys is that you need to figure out how you're going to position your product and help the customer get emotionally involved in product selections, because I think that that's what's going to make them really feel empowered and like they're getting the system that they really want and deserve. And look, if you don't believe me, right? According to the NAHB, when they surveyed homeowners, the 65% of homeowners who had their roof replaced, these are homeowners that wrote a check to pay for their roof, right? 68% of them don't know what shingle brand is on their home. 43% said that they went with the product because that's what the contractor told them. Only 18% said that they requested that product. Because if there's anything you take away from this, it's the simple fact that consumers, when they buy from you, they're not buying a brand or a shingle. They're buying you. And if you do the process correctly, you should be able to put all the literature in the front of them. I could give you GAF Certainteed, TAMCO, 𝗖cie, Owens Corning, or Atlas. Which one do you want? And if you built that trusted advisor status that compels them to really see you as the expert, they're probably going to respond by saying, well, which one do you think is best? And then you can say, well, I would go with TAMCO. So here's the other problem that we get into in our product presentation. We're trying to build that emotional connection, but we don't give the customer a choice. And guys, I'm speaking to those of us that may be aligned with some of the shingle manufacturer certification programs. And, we're really pushing the fact that you're going to get a, golden pledge roof or a platinum preferred roof. And I'm not trying to undermine the value of those programs or the value of those warranties. But my problem is some of us go out and we think we're making it easier by saying to the homeowner, I'm providing you with the best roof system money can buy. It's the roof everybody wants. What color do you want? I would say to you guys that that's not a great idea. Guys, if you don't provide people with options, they see it as tyrannical. They believe they have no control. There's no autonomy. It's a huge demotivator. You've got to give them options. But conversely, if you provide them with too many options, it will create anxiety, self-doubt. They're going to be demotivated and they're going to need to walk away because they're confused. So you don't want to overload them. What I would suggest that you do is highlight on their home the critical roof areas. These are the areas of the home that really, that are most susceptible to roof leaks. And this is an area where ProFund can really help because you have a property report that highlights the weather history and also talks about the areas of the home that they need and shows you pictures of the home. So you can talk about, hey, based on the wind and the rain and the hail that we get in these areas, there's some areas of the home that are more susceptible to leaks. Do you want to talk about some of the options to provide a little bit extra protection? And the homeowner says, yeah, that's great. Then you can introduce them to those options, and then they're going to feel like, wow, this is a system that I feel really good about this roof because they were involved in the choices. Guys, choices are great. Like, look, I got two different options, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. The most common option is a closed cut valley. Most of our customers like to go with the open metal valley. Here's the reasons why. Which do you think is going to be the choice that you'd want to go with on your home? And see this banner up here, it says most popular. That's just social proof selling. By me putting that banner up there, I ease decision making by making the homeowner come to the belief that, well, if that's what most people are getting, then maybe that's the one that we should get too. Social proof is really, really powerful, not only in terms of like how reviews drive people to our business, right? But also in terms of how making these types of statements makes it easier for people to decide. Guys, a big reason why we don't close more sales is sales reps don't make the project affordable and they don't make it perceived to be affordable. And look, there's a couple of best practices that I'm going to, highlight for you guys when it comes to that speak really directly to the financing stuff. Number one, don't ask them if they require financing. Let them bring it up. And if they don't bring it up in the end, assume it. You cannot ask them to or wait for them to raise a price objection before you offer the payment. It's too late. Don't assume they're cash buyers. And don't use, again, financing to overcome the price objections. So here's what happens. You present them with this price and they go into sticker shock. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. And then we go, well, I could finance it. Guys, the logical side of the brain at this point has already told the heart, stop. You don't even know if this is a good number. And it literally facilitates them making the decision, no matter what you say, I think I got to get other options. But guys, when you put a payment next to that price on the same page at the same exact time, you shift their attention from $18,264, you shift it to $239 a month. And remember I said earlier that if it's something that they really want, they'll find the money to pay for it. It's my assertion that if they really want to buy from you, there isn't anybody that you meet with that can't tell you instantly whether or not they could make $239 a month happen. One other thing that I will tell you is the reason why I'm a fan of ProFund is because ProFund sets the defaults to an 11.99% rate at 144 months, which tends to cause some heartburn, right? Oh, I'm not really a fan of that rate. I'm not really a fan of that term. And it's designed that way because if we can make it about the money, we then air out the money objection. And AIR is an acronym that stands for acknowledge, isolate, remedy. If they say to you, that's a lot of money, John. Hey, I understand it's a lot of money. I acknowledge the objection. I understand it's a lot of money. I isolate it. Look, if I could just set the money aside for 1 minute, would there be any other reason you wouldn't want to work with us? If they say, no, I like you, it's just more than I can afford, I'd say, so if I found a better option, if I could make this more affordable, if I could make this fit more comfortably within your budget, would you want to do it? That's the remedy side. So again, if you think about what ProFund's doing, they're starting you off at a 144 at 11.99%. Wow, they say 12 years at 11.99%. I don't like that. Well, we air it out. Hey, look, I completely understand. You're not the first person to tell me that. But look, if we could set the loan option aside for one moment, would there be any other reason you wouldn't want to work with us? If they say, no, I like you guys, it just seems high and I don't want to be paying this off for 12 years, I remedy it. So if I could find you a better loan option, would you do it? And if they say yes, you then text the homeowner a link to their cell phone where they answer 3 questions: household income, social security number, and email. ProFund then does a soft pull, doesn't affect their credit, bids that information out to 20 different lenders that has 200 different loan options. And any one of those options that's presented to the homeowner within that tier 1 lender program, it's a 2% merchant fee to you. And they've got loans in there that are significantly better than 11.99% at 144 months. So guys, the last thing I'll tell you is the reasons why they fail is they're unprepared. They're unprepared to follow a process. They're unprepared to ask good questions. They're unprepared to ask for the sale. And they're also unprepared to answer the common objections that get in the way. Guys, I really believe that the best thing about sales and what makes it so easy for top performers who recognize and prepare for it, there's only 5 to 7 objections you're going to hear in any given sales situation. The problem that I see is that when I work with contractors, I can have reps, your reps, that are going to tell me, I hear this objection every single day, and I've been hearing it for 5 years. And when I ask them, well, how do you respond to it? They're as unprepared today as they were the first time they heard it. There's no excuse for that. And as much as I understand as business owners and managers, we want to shake our heads and say, well, they should know better. Well, they should also be accountable to knowing that how to answer those objections. And that's something that we as owners and sales managers should be able to coach them on so that we can make sure that they're committed to the right behaviors. And guys, look, I'll tell you that I firmly believe that sales reps constantly want to ask me every time I get into a room and I say, what do you want to talk about? They always go, I want to talk about objections. Look, I believe that the ability to overcome whatever objection we hear has much less to do with how we respond to the objection. It has much more to do with what we discussed leading up to the objection, right? If I meet the girl of my dreams and I get down on my knee and I ask her to marry me and she says, well, I want to see who else is going to ask, or I need to think about it, or I need to ask my dad, it's a pretty good chance she doesn't want to marry me. And I can tell you that there's very little I could say at that moment in time that's going to compel her to want to do so. So let's stop focusing on how do we deal with the objection, and let's start focusing on how can we utilize the sales process to put us in a position where the customer really wants to do business with us. And then when they raise a price objection, we use the AIR approach to air out that objection. Bottom line is this: you didn't lose the sale because your price was too high. You lost the sale because they didn't think you were worth the price. So guys, here's my contact information. My QR code is up in the top left-hand corner. Again, if there's ever anything I can do for any of you guys, please don't hesitate to contact me.
So good. John, thank you. Any questions before we close out? All right. So a lot of our members have asked if this is being recorded in our private member chat. The answer is yes. We will share this with our members. And let me take a screenshot of this too, John, and share this in our private chat as well. But John, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this training, man.
Thank you, man. I love it. Anything I can do, man. I'm a big fan of what Limitless is trying to affect here, and obviously they're growing exponentially, and that's awesome. On an individual one-on-one basis, again, if there's ever anything I can do, you guys have my contact information. Don't be a stranger. I'll always make time for you guys.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, guys. Until next time.
Everybody. This was awesome.
Thanks,
John.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yes, my pleasure.